Cougs house. The Houston Cougars get another 30-point win to stay undefeated in Big 12 play. And I don't describe it. They keep surprising me each and every time.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, a podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Appreciate you making your first listen each and every day. If you're enjoying the conversation, but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. How about this? Which Houston Cougar on the present roster in basketball is going to be the highest NBA draft pick? I got a couple guesses right now, but keep it flowing because right now Houston is undefeated in Big 12 play, 12-3 on the season, 87-57 win over Kansas State. I got a lot of thoughts on this one so far. We're going to digest it a little bit. Full disclosure, I missed the first 10 minutes of the game or so, coaching my own game. High school basketball coach had to come home after that was over. Game got moved from Friday night because of the weather and stuff like that, but got to play it. And we won by 22. I was feeling pretty good. And the Houston hauls off and wins by 30. Lots of comments flowing in this one as well, but I got to start with, as I get here, let me see where things are going. I got Adrian chiming in here. The offense has turned it on. What do you think changed? Francis has been a factor in a lot of these games. So I want to talk about Francis in a second, but I really do want to start with the offense of this one because 87 points, as Big Jack points out. Ho-hum, Cougs win by 30 on the road. Yeah, they won by 30 on the road. And I can't, anyway, as I look at this, I feel like it's interesting because they won by 30, and I guess Emanuel Sharp was hot early, and the offense was humming. I don't know that I ever necessarily felt like they were I don't know, just someone had the hot hand. It wasn't the kind of game where someone had 28 or something, and it just went bonkers, right? Pretty collective effort here. Francis is 11 off the bench, as Adrian pointed out here early. I should point out 11 off the bench is really big. And I also think it's worth pointing out that the role that he's played this year, right, where he comes in as the starter, gets hurt, loses the starting job, ultimately becomes a backup, to come out and have a 11.9 rebound and a steal. Look, that's a pretty impressive performance for anybody when you factor in the fact that he is, a guy that could rightfully be disappointed, be sulky, be looking on to what's next, be upset that this is the way his senior campaign is going after, having to play second fiddle to Jarris Walker a couple years ago, kind of getting the brunt of the criticism from the team last year. As Adrian points out, that he's turned it on down the stretch here. I think the truth is that Big 12 play has been friendly to him. Houston's had some opponents and will continue to have some opponents that I think are kind of guys that he's going to be able to out-athlete, which really helps slow the game down. And frankly, they haven't played a whole lot of 7-footers. I actually think he kind of had his way with Hunter Dickinson down the stretch of the second game for sure last year for Houston. But 7-footers can present a problem when you got a 6'8" guy with a giant wingspan. And really, they hadn't played a 7-footer that can keep up with him and his movement, helped him out a lot. But the offense guy I really want to talk about in this game is actually the guy who started in front of him, and that is one JoJo Tugler. Now, it's a quick post-game reaction. I actually got to go back and watch the first 10 minutes and then kind of rewatch the game a whole second time. But Tugler was the most impressive Coug to me in this one. 13 points, 10 rebounds, and a double-double, couple of assists, couple of blocks. I don't know that the couple of blocks even necessarily completely discusses the way he deterred so many shots inside. JoJo was just all over the place defensively, touching the shot, deflections and diving on the floor, high, low, left, right, covering up the lane, all of it. Really love the effort out of him. It's interesting because like I wouldn't have called him like a floater defensively, and by that I mean like it wasn't like he had like an assignment he could sag off of and help off of. I mean, frankly, he had Coleman Hawkins, who was the highest, I guess, NBA prospect rating guy on Kansas State, and instead he he got to cover that guy and still be the help side defender. His double step or his gallop step, I should say, and the backside deflections are pretty impressive. He looks more and more like an NBA player. And I've been texting back and forth with two guys that cover the NBA draft for a living, and I'm trying to get one of them to come on the show based on my recording schedule, and their recording schedule is a little wonky, right? But I'm talking to them, and they get more and more impressed with him every outing. And the truth is, I think they entered the season like, yeah, but like he's 6'7" and 6'8", right? Yes, he's got the 7'6" wingspan that makes up for a lot. Yes, he's got the crazy high motor, makes up for a lot. But 6'8" measurable, blah blah. And now that he's got another half a season under his belt, he's midway, I guess, just over midway through his sophomore year. They're coming back to me like, okay, I might see what you're talking about here, right? Like, oh, okay, like I see where the offense is coming from. I see how that motor makes up for a lot. I see how that length makes up for a lot, and frankly, how I personally have argued, and they've gone back and forth with me some, that being 6'8" actually helps him defensively because he's just more agile on the perimeter when he gets in switches and stuff, and any monsters and doubles and things like that. The other post, we mentioned two guys so far. J'Wan Roberts hit his 1,000th point in this one, 1,000 points as a Houston Cougar. He's going to have a bunch of milestones for the course of the year, winningest player in program in Fertitta Center, right? Those kind of things. He's going to continue to hit those over the course of the season. And really, like the deal here with J'Wan is just like he like much like Jamal Shead embodied the culture last year. The only real difference between the cultural impact between Shead and J'Wan Roberts is like Jamal was a much more vocal guy. J'Wan's a little bit more introverted, at least with the public sphere. I think the guys internally love him, and he's a pretty good jokester. But I think that's really the only like big difference there is like we heard Jamal's voice a lot more in the past. Part of that's being the point guard too, I guess, but the cultural impact those guys feels very similar. And so it's really great to see him continue to hit all those milestones. I don't know that his jersey will get retired in the way that I have advocated Jamal Shead's will, but I think his name being in the record books for all these things will kind of serve a similar purpose. You're not gonna be able to talk about this era of Houston Cougar basketball without talking about Roberts either. And so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. He hit the 1,000 point tonight. That's the latest entry for his name into that record book. Emanuel Sharp started off high in the first half, 15 points in that first half, and it looked like he could go for 30. Didn't look anything was slowing him down. And like I said, I missed part of the first half coaching my own game, but when I got home and started watching, I thought it was interesting watching the way that Kansas State was trying to cover Emanuel, right? Because Emanuel was not necessarily like left open. He hit one crazy deep three, apparently. I saw the clip, didn't see that one live, but it wasn't like it was kick out because Cryer or Uzan were diving or post feeds and kicks or whatever. It was much more like isolation type plays. And I've been asking for, and again, he scored all his points in the first half, so he didn't get a whole lot in the second. I've been saying, like in those crunch time kind of moments last year, Jamal was the kind of guy that could get downhill, get his points like that, right? It feels like Emanuel's got that in his game. I thought he got to the rim really well as a sophomore last year. He's kind of putting a lot of stuff together this year. It'll be interesting to see the next close competitive game when they need those kind of points and buckets, where that's going to come from, if it's going to come from him. Got some comments here flowing in from Blessed and Highly Favored. Welcome to the chat here. Talking about Louisiana giving us all this talent. Crazy how stacked the state is with athletes. So I think what's interesting about Louisiana is actually the per capita athlete deal, because Texas has produced more basketball players, football players, et cetera, obviously. Louisiana just does it at a competitive level, highly competitive level, and is so much smaller, right? Houston does a great job recruiting the Bayou to Bayou in football. Speaking of football, Keyshawn Henderson today. Did y'all watch the All-American game? Oh, Lord. We'll talk about him by Monday's episode, I promise. But this is a basketball-focused show section right now. But oh, my Lord. Keyshawn Henderson looked really good in that All-American game. I want to talk a little bit more about Cougs potentially getting pro kind of love in this one. Before we get too far, though, I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. You're tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? That's a thing of the past. The taxes don't have to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with TurboTax experts who can get you to get you the right return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions, whether you've got one form or 20. I've got a few myself. TurboTax experts give you the tax undivided attention. They give your tax their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on the progress so you can focus on what really matters. Don't have to lift a finger. Get peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes, money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax, most money back guaranteed. Head to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on the rest of your day. Only available at TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates, only available with iOS mobile apps. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs. You're talking about Houston's big win, 87-57 over the Kansas State Wildcats in basketball. Houston stays undefeated in Big 12 play, gets to 12-3 on the season, and this game was interestingly led by individual offensive efforts. Again, just 13 assists on their 87 points. That's one way to point to the indicativeness of how much their scoring came in like getting mismatches and getting into isolation kind of stuff. Tugler, I think, was the beneficiary of the most assists of any guy because of some drop-offs and dunks and lobs and that kind of stuff. But on the whole, this offense looks so much better than it has at different points this season. I left the Oklahoma State game worried about the offense because I don't think Oklahoma State's going to be very good. Houston scored just 60 points. They've scored 86 points against BYU and now 87 points against Kansas State. We'll see what they do with West Virginia on Wednesday night. But right now, the offense feels like it's humming. They got a couple guys, like I said, I mentioned Tugler and Sharp as pro prospect kind of guys. Miles Uzan had 8 points and just 2 assists. A couple more hockey assist type plays as well. I think the interesting thing about him, though, as far as projecting him to the NBA, is he's 6'4", and he controlled the pace of this game. There aren't analytical data things out on this yet. I don't have the metrics on it. But I do think that's worth pointing out that on the whole, right, Uzan played a pretty decent chunk of the game, even with the blowout being what it was throughout, and was able to go the entire length of the game with just a turnover and never felt like Houston was rushed. Even in the beginning when the game was reportedly kind of close, it didn't look like Houston was getting flummoxed or anything like that. Miles' control of the pace of play feels reminiscent of previous Houston guards that have gone to the NBA as well. Now, he might not be the scorer that Sasser is, or he might not show off the three-point jump shot that Grimes did or whatever, or catch and shoot kind of stuff, but he certainly looks like the kind of guy that get in the NBA and control the pace of play. In this game specifically, I thought it was interesting that he kind of seemed to guard multiple guys on the opposing opposing backcourt, and really was kind of very fluid in how he switched stuff up in this one. I think as I look at it, right, his positional size is going to be a big deal for him as well. That's a big deal for pro people. They want to make sure they have the measurables down, and there have been so many times the measurables fail. They don't want to be the next one of those, right? On the whole, though, in this game, I think the thing that stuck out for me as far as him looking like an NBA player in this one, I think that was several guys look like NBA kind of guys in this one, was that versatility defensively. I mentioned it on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter at Painsworth512 or any social media at Painsworth512, I've been kind of following Terrence's journey. I think Terrence has pro upside because of his similar defensive versatility. In this one, he couldn't get the offense going. Ended up getting 2 or 3 behind the 3-point line, but it felt like it was hard to get him shots. And I don't know that it's necessarily something to be concerned about. The team scored 87 points, right? But on the whole, I like it when he comes in with that second unit, or he comes in that first rotation, kind of the 1B unit, because they kind of rotate through that first A of the rotation pretty consistently. And it's like the Terrence Arsenault show. It's like a spark off the bench, microwave kind of stuff from the Lakers in the 80s, right? And I really, really I like it when he gets that kind of intentionality about getting the ball through his hands as Houston scores. Now, obviously, that was earlier in the season when that was happening more often, and teams have scouted and things like that as we get going. And so it's hard to find things to complain about in this one. I don't mean to like nitpick on certain things, and picking nits is never fun. Houston's got some very winnable games coming up very, very soon before we get out of here. They end up having a very beatable but top 25 West Virginia team. I actually don't know what their score of them in Colorado will be tomorrow. I think they play Sunday. But they lost Arizona by a decent chunk after having beat them earlier this year. And so like it's hard to figure out what's to make out of them. They lost to Pittsburgh and Jalen Lowe earlier this year, Houston native Jalen Lowe, but they also beat Gonzaga. And so it's hard to figure out what to make of West Virginia. We'll have that broken down obviously by Wednesday, but I think Houston should feel good about that one. They got to come to Houston playing Fertitta. It's really hard to win in Fertitta, obviously, as well. Houston then has Central Florida. I think that's a Saturday, like a week from today, and that's in Orlando. It's like an early game. It's like a noon Eastern time game because they're playing in Orlando, and that's just when the TV slots worked out or whatever. But UCF is not like Taco Fall UCF. I think this is, I would say I think that Houston can actually kind of get to, they got Utah after that. I think they can get to the Kansas game on the 25th, still undefeated in conference. And while it's a game in Fog Allen and Houston lost up there last year, complete games like this one today where people are clicking on offense, it's coming from multiple angles, and they completely have the opponent discombobulated defensively. Stringing a few of those in a row is going to go a long way towards getting ready for the next one. So we're breaking those kind of things down up very, very soon on Locked On Coogs. Hit subscribe to the bell so you know we're live. We got that, Keyshawn Henderson's performance in the Army All-American game. We've got recruiting news. There's a short out right now, but make sure you go check out that Keontae Scott's coming to town. A whole bunch of stuff going on with the football program, adding more. Great time to be Houston Cougar. Locked On Cougars, primary for Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.